The Conversation by Sync Skills.
Literally, in my mind, be praying to God to take my mother's life simply because she was in so much pain, and I felt that the only exit to her pain was death.
That tragedy that happened that shaped you like, yeah, I'm going to do everything to succeed. And because losing both of your parents, something people don't recover.
It was more of like HIV had taken something from me. I need to prove to this disease that I can fight back. I have to do things to succeed. And so I became more resilient. I became stronger. I became wiser.
To achieve result, it's a sequence of small steps. Small progress, small wins to get that result. People see the end result and they just feel like, oh, that thing magically happened. It's not always like that.
A lot of people who have been successful with scholarships have gotten a lot of rejections as well. What we call failure. It's a win, but it's quoted as failure. So you have to unwrap it. And the process of unwrapping all of that failure, that is you learning all of the skills you need to learn, getting all of the rejections, not having money, losing parents, losing family.
Hi, Dr. AAP, our favorite doctor of ceremony,
That's right.
as we like to call you.
That's right, yeah.
And congrats on your recent completion of your PhD. Uh, that's really an inspiring feat, and
Thank
we
you.
we appreciate your support as well. But welcome to the conversation where we share matters about living in Australia, career, and everything in between. And I'm excited to jump on this chat with you today to learn from your wealth of experience. Um, you know, living in Australia as an immigrant, and not just any immigrant, not just any other immigrant, but like an ideal one, as I like to say. You're thriving, and it's great. I know you have a lot of things to share with us, from life in Australia to scholarship. I know that's your domain. And your
That's right.
incredible story. The last webinar where you shared that powerful story about your journey really was so
Hmm.
moving that I had to, like, I watched it like a few times, edited it. I think I shared that snippet with you as well.
Yes, it is. Yes,
but
it was
but
fun. It was
but
really
it's,
exciting. Yeah.
no, it was really, really inspiring, and I was like, yeah, we need to actually go deeper into that conversation, because honestly, a lot of people are inspired by your words, and we're like, wow, this is such a powerful story. But it's a pleasure to have you on on the podcast today. Thank you for giving us the privilege and sparing your time. Thank you so much. For
Thanks for
those
having
of
me.
Yeah, for people that don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is Dr. Aaron Akpo Philip. I like to go by the acronym Dr. AAP. I just completed my PhD earlier this year in the field of public health. I
Yeah.
also have a master's degree in public health promotion from the UK. And then I've got a bachelor's in microbiology from Nasarawa State University in Nigeria. So, in terms of my career, I have been a public health practitioner in the last decade. I've worked as a community development worker, working in the space of HIV, sexual reproductive health, and governance with young people, persons with disabilities, and other priority groups such as orphans and vulnerable children, sex workers. Um, so that's kind of mostly what I mean. Right now, in my day to day, my day job is like I work full time as a researcher. So, um, but yeah, that's a brief about me. I guess I'll get to share more as we go along.
Definitely, because I
Oh
want
yeah, and
to get
of course,
into
I forgot that I am a doctor of
Doc.
ceremony, as I like to call
We love that. I think that's pretty unique. Have you done that trademark of that doctor ceremony?
I haven't. I think I need to go and do it.
Yeah, you need to consider that. I think that's powerful. Yeah, but thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. You have a very unique journey, as I was saying earlier, in terms of I think the things that actually shaped you as a person, all the challenges, all the things that you've had to navigate. I just want to get into that so that people can appreciate, like the product we're seeing now. Not calling it product, like the result that we're seeing now was built over many years. So, like, I want you to actually go a bit deeper into that journey, like right from Nigeria, all the things you had to do in terms of, you know, how you actually got a lot of opportunity to study in different countries, and then moving to Australia. Like, I think that journey is just so inspiring. So I want to get into that for the
Hmm.
benefit of those who don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a story. It's for me, my story. What would I say? Would have started. Uh, I would say maybe when I was. Let me put it at a 15-year-old mark,
Yeah,
because at 15, when I was 15 and I was 20, I lost my father and my mother um, to HIV. And so I've kind of remained working and doing volunteering in that space. That has been my inspiration. So, like I mentioned, for me as a kid, I was I I was going to I I was in secondary school like every other child. I was in a boarding school. I used to ask. We used to write letters then back home to our parents so they can send provisions and all that. I remember I used to send letters to my mom to send
mm,
me provisions, send me money. I used to get that
mm,
coming through, but all of the while, I didn't know this was 2000, 2000 and, yeah, 2005. Yeah,
yeah,
2005. And so I didn't know my mom was sick at the time. And so when it was holiday period, I had returned back home and I went home and my mother was not there. And I said, "Where's my mom?" And they said, "Oh, she's receiving treatment somewhere. She's sick, so we have to take you to where she is." And so I got into the car with some of the family members, and we drove to outskirts of town to a certain village, a remote village, and we got into this compound.
yeah,
It was full of huts. There were just huts everywhere, and there was this
wow,
man trying to, prepare herbs. And I was asking what are we doing here as a 15-year-old child at the time,
mm,
or a 15-year-old kid. And they pointed to a certain room, and I got into the room, and there I saw my mother. Um, I mean, she was I just couldn't recognize her. She had completely deteriorated. To be
mm,
honest, she was at a stage where my mom used to be a very chubby woman. She used to be very she was she was doing well. She was well chopped up, as some people will say. And but
mm,
at this time, I could literally count, the ribs on her chest from a distance. From the door right to where she was sitting. There were all kinds sort of calabashes around the room. There were herbs and all of that thing. And the idea at the time was that she was attacked by some evil spirits, and uh, she got infected by some disease because she got promoted at work, and some people were jealous, and so they had inflicted her with a disease. That was so that the idea was also spiritual attack on her. That was the story at the time. Anyways,
mm,
she went through that. They discharged her from from the traditional healer's place. Um, maybe a week or 2 weeks after that. And then she came back home. The next day, she had a temperature spike. They had to take her back to the hospital, and she didn't come back from the hospital because she eventually died from the hospital. It was so bad at the time. I remember when I could see my mother as a kid in the hospital, I would literally in my mind be praying to God to take my mother's life. Imagine a child having to pray that his mother should die simply because he felt that she was in so much pain, and I felt that the only exit to her pain was death. And so I was telling God, perhaps you just need to let her die, because she was completely, she had gotten to, at the time, I later realized that, of course, it was HIV. Earlier in the time, people didn't know it was HIV because there was the assumption that it was a spiritual attack. But then she had gotten to, full-blown AIDS. And then she eventually died. But that was a very, very troubling time for me, because I couldn't imagine going to the hospital every time to see how my mom had. It was more of like I was looking at bones, on the hospital bed. It was so sad that I had to just pray to God to please take her life. And I felt that my prayers were answered in a way, because she died and she was now peaceful because she didn't have to suffer again. That was my idea at the time, but it wasn't even a prayer for healing or a prayer for anything. It was a prayer from a child to God saying, my mom has suffered so much, please take her life. But that was a turnaround for my life, because it shaped pretty much every other thing that I did, because I began to do work. My master's research is in HIV, my PhD research in the field of HIV as well. I've volunteered in the space of HIV. I've worked for the last 10 years and volunteered and researched and done all the things I've done in the space of HIV. And that was my sentimental attachment. I wrote an article recently on my website, which I published. Please feel free to share with people who might get to watch this recording. And the title of the article is called Life Can Come from Death. And in that article, what I wrote was I wrote the story of my mother, how she died from HIV. But although she died, there was life, in the sense that my life took a different turn. I took that challenge. I researched, I worked, I volunteered, I got many scholarships to do my master's in the UK and a PhD in Australia. All of that was birthed out of the death of my mom. That's the way I interpreted it. Although she died, life had come for me from the death of my mother. And so I titled that Life Can Come from Death, my personal fight with HIV. Or something of that. So, but that's it. I had that personal. It was more of like HIV had taken something from me. I need to prove to this disease that I can fight back, and the way to fight back is to use my experience or to do all the research and all the things I've done to leverage that pain that I had to demonstrate that although you took away family members and loved ones from me, I am able to come out from that victorious. I'm able to do all of the things I've achieved. I'm still achieving. I've not gotten to that stage in my life yet, but my mom died in 2006. My dad died in 2011. And after that, I got a scholarship for my master's to go to the UK, which was fully funded, by the way. And then I went back to Nigeria, worked a bit. Then I got a PhD scholarship, came to Australia, and I've completed a PhD. And all of my research have been in the area of HIV. And that is just to say that although my parents have died, that didn't stop me. And I like to think myself, I mean, my story, I like to always emphasize that my story is not a sub story. Yes, I lost parents, but I had a lot of beautiful people, a lot of good family members around me. But that didn't take away the fact that there was a lot I would have gained if my parents were alive as a child. Um, there are things that you get from your parents that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
lost, although I lost them, I had, good family members who looked after me, who were really
Wow.
nice. But to break out of, or to get to where I wanted to be, it was a personal fight. And so,
Mm,
um, all of the things I did, lots of volunteering work, um, in Nigeria at the time to build my experience in the space of HIV. And so when it was time for me to apply for the scholarship I did get awarded in 2016. It was easy because I could leverage all of those experiences I had. In fact, I got awarded a master's scholarship. I was awarded a scholarship by the UK government, which was a Commonwealth shared scholarship, and I also was funded
mm,
by the WHO, the World Health Organization. That scholarship was meant
wow.
to be in Zambia, but I turned down that one. They came at the same time, and I figured out, where do I want
Wow.
to go? Do I want to go to Zambia, or do I want to go to the UK? And so I went to the UK, did my master's degree, went back home, worked for a bit, about a year, and then I got a PhD scholarship. My research again in this area of HIV. Came to Australia in the last 4 years. I did a PhD and I've just graduated. So I used to be AAP, now I'm Dr. AAP. Um, but that's kind of my story. That's part of my story because there's so much to say. But
Definitely.
the basis of it is that um, I I I lost family, I lost parents
Yeah,
many years back. That would have set me back, obviously, because it's a
yeah,
hard thing for a child to grow up without parents, for
yeah.
anybody. Um, but that was my inspiration. That became my drive. That became the reason why I needed to prove a point. I needed to demonstrate that. And at the time, now it looks like I knew what I was doing back then. And that's the interesting thing. It looks like, oh, the moment my parents died, I sat down and I wrote out a plan that, okay, I've got to have a master's, I've got to have a PhD, I've got to do this.
Mm,
There wasn't any of that plan. There was just that deliberate drive and hunger to
mm,
not remain static. There was
mm,
that push to succeed. And so I tried my hand in a lot of things. Of course, I came to volunteer. I worked. I did a lot of stuff, right? Um, but now that I look back now and I'm sharing the story, it seemed to appear that my life was going on a trajectory. It seems like there was a pattern I was following. But at the time, there
yeah,
wasn't anything like that. It was just a case of you wake up in the morning, you know that, hey, it's just you here. You have to do this life in the best way you know how. And so you get up, you fight every day, you keep pushing. And that
mm,
was the thing. But now I look back and it's like, oh, it looks like it was all designed. Did a PhD. I did my master's
yeah.
in the area of HIV. Did a PhD in the area of HIV. It looked like I had it all figured out, but I didn't. It was just the sheer need to succeed. And
Wow.
um, and so yeah, I feel fortunate. I feel privileged. I wrote an article again on my website again maybe a few years ago now that I called myself a privileged orphan. And
Mm,
the reason why I called myself a privileged orphan is that although I lost parents, I knew there were a lot of people who still had their parents, but I was
yeah,
better off than they were
yeah.
because I didn't have parents. They had parents, but I was better off in the way where I was. And so I called myself a privileged orphan. I don't think at the
Mm,
time I already had my PhD. No, I don't think I had my master's degree or I was still on the journey. I can't remember when I wrote that article. Um, but that was the reason. I felt that my parents were no longer with me, but I was still privileged, and I recognized that privilege. Um, and and, and that kept me going. So yeah,
wow.
that's kind of been my story.
That's super powerful. Thank you for going in depth and sharing that powerful story.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries. Thank
Uh,
you. It's always a
So I
pleasure.
just wanted to like, you talked about your pursuit for success. You're not resilient. Was it that that event where you lost your parents that shaped that, or you were like, based on maybe your environment, your parents' values, and all of those things, you already instilled that resilient spirit? Or was it just that, like, that tragedy that happened that shaped you? Like, yeah, I'm gonna do everything to succeed and make this situation better. Because it could have gone the other way, really. Losing both of your parents that young is like it's something people don't recover from, really. So, like, how did you build that resilience spirit in pursuit of success?
I mean, I'd like to think, I'd like to give my parents, my late parents, their credit. They raised me well.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but my mom loved me so very much. And like I like to even think that at some point there were things that maybe in some areas I would say I was a spoiled kid
Hmm.
because my mom made sure I had everything I wanted. My parents made sure I had everything I wanted. So it wasn't a case of I developed so much resilience at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but I know that my parents contributed to shaping my life in the way it has
Yeah.
turned out to be. I remember at the time when we were going to university in undergrad days. I see that some of my friends will have maybe they were returning to school with a pocket money of maybe 20, 50, 60, 70, 100,000, you know.
Wow.
But I remember my dad never gave me more than 10,000 naira. This
Hmm.
was 2011, and I knew he had more. Of course, he had more to give me, but he never gave me more than myself and my older brother. He never gave us more than 10,000 naira. And so he would give me 10,000 naira. And then maybe after a few months, when you start calling that, oh, you're short of cash, then he might send another 5,000 naira,
Hmm.
you know. So at that age, I didn't have. I mean, I was in the university. I could see my friends playing around with money. They were having fun, but I didn't have that. And not
Hmm.
because I didn't know my dad. I knew my dad could give me more, but he
Yeah.
didn't. So I like to think that maybe it was his own way of training me or training us at the time because I then valued money. I then knew that money was not to be thrown around or spent. And so when he was no longer there, it wasn't when my parents were no longer there, it wasn't a case of I was so used to money, to luxury and fun and all of that. It wasn't the case. It was a case of, oh, I used to get 10,000 and it's no longer there. And this was a twist because the very first college, and that was my drive because when they died, I figured, okay, I have to start doing stuff to get extra money, right? And so I
Yeah.
started applying for scholarships. And my very first scholarship that I got was in 2000 and yeah, shortly after my dad died. I applied for the scholarship actually before he died. Um, but then after he died, I got awarded the scholarship, and this scholarship was awarding me was from Total E&P's Total Oil and Gas Company. And so every session I was getting together with a couple of my friends who also got awarded a scholarship. We get 150,000 naira every
Wow.
session, right? Now just imagine that I used to get 10,000 naira from my dad.
Hmm.
Now he died. He's no longer
Hmm.
there. My parents are no longer there. It's just me and of course family and all that. But now I was getting 150,000 from an oil company. So it was a big jump
Hmm.
in my, in the income I had. But because I had gotten it not from somebody giving me the money, I had to write an exam, I had to go through a different process. It was a scholarship, so I valued that money.
Yeah.
But I think that the training my dad gave me of not just throwing money around us, kind of helped me to appreciate the fact that to appreciate life,
Yeah.
appreciate money, appreciate what I now had. But then after they died, of course, that resilience increased because I now had to, that realization that your parents are not here. There are a lot of things that you may want that you
Mm.
cannot get because they are not here. So you have to push yourself to that limit. And so
Yeah.
that was where the drive for scholarships started coming for me. And so I got my first scholarship then, just before I finished my undergrad days. And the moment I finished, uh, even before I finished, the moment I got that first scholarship, I started thinking about, would it, if total scholarship are awarding us 150,000 naira, maybe they also
Mm.
sponsor people to go abroad and do master's degrees. So as at the time, I remember we went to Abuja to collect the award letter um in 2000, yeah, 2011, yeah. So that's when I started researching for scholarships for a master's degree. In fact,
Mm.
the folder I had in my laptop titled scholarships was created then. Of course, I've changed
Mm.
a few laptops now, but it was that folder I kept copying and pasting into all of the laptops I've had in the different years now. But the first folder I created, I titled it scholarships, was in 2011, and that was when I started thinking, okay, I've got to apply for scholarships if you know I want to do a master's degree and all that. So I started applying for scholarship. That was where the push for scholarship came. Fortunately, I got awarded many more scholarships after that for my master's or my PhD. And of course, now I and a friend of mine, Dr. Paul, we run a platform that share free
Yeah.
scholarship information in Australia. We've got a followership, I think over 20K on Instagram, over 40,000 or over 30,000 on Twitter, which is now X, and on Facebook, which
No.
where we have a private group where we share information free for scholarship information. We've got a private group that has over 80,000 members across the world,
No.
globally, and all of that is happening
No.
for free. And that's because I felt
Yeah.
scholarships gave me gave me a reason to succeed, to break out
Yeah.
of where I would have been. And so why don't I use that knowledge to help other people
Yeah.
who might be in similar situations or in worse
Yeah.
situations than I was? So yeah, so I think to
Mm.
go back, I mean I've rambled a bit because that's what happens when you share your story. But I think going back to the very question you asked, that resilience, I give credit to my parents. They did their part, but there was a shoot in that for me after they died
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was just me. I needed that. Okay, I have to do things to succeed, and so I became more resilient. I became stronger. I became wiser. And yeah, and here I like to think that I turned out fine.
Wow. So going back to your scholarship journey, the very first one you got, that was the one from Total, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, like, how did you get to find out? And you were already doing some volunteer work, right? Before then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. At the
Were
time,
you
no, at the
positioning or it was just coincidence?
at the time I hadn't started actively volunteering, but I was already attending. I attended a summer youth camp before my mom died, so I was already involved. There was a summer youth camp that people attend in my town. Then, when people on holiday,
Mm.
they go to attend the summer youth camp, and then they taught us about life skills, HIV, sexual reproductive health, all of those stuff. So I was already doing some kind of volunteering in the background, but not as much.
Yeah.
But I think um, the scholarship I got at the time, I think I just stumbled into it because we just went to a cafe at the time. So, okay, a bit of a backstory. So, when my mom died, um, and I think, yeah, when my mom died, I used to. There was that need that, okay, although my dad was there, but I already started having that feeling that, okay, you've got to do stuff to get extra cash, right? So
Yeah.
um, for you, I'm sure you'll be aware with JAMB, Joint
Yeah.
Admission Matriculation Exam, that people write in Nigeria then.
Yeah.
And how people used to go and register JAMB.
Yeah.
So you have to go and you buy the scratch card,
Scratch card.
and
Yeah.
then you go to a cyber cafe. Then internet
Yes.
was, of course, it's not everybody now has phones and laptops,
Yeah.
but then you have to go to a cyber cafe, and then you have to buy a ticket where you
Yeah.
put in your time, then you register your JAMB. Now, what we
Alright.
used to do then, right, was because I needed with a friend of mine then, we will go to cyber cafes and we will buy what they call bulk time. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but maybe usually people when they come to the cafe they buy like 30 minutes or 1 hour
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
browse, right? But we will go to a cafe and we'll buy like 12 hours. Then we will go around and be looking for people who have JAMB exams to register. At this time, I had not even gone into university yet. I had not even got into university. I was still, it was a year. I missed out a year. The first year I wrote JAMB, I didn't get into uni. So the second year that I was meant to write. So we're going around looking for people who are JAMB to register. We will get a lot of files of people who are JAMB to register. Then we'll go to the cyber cafe, collect all of their things. Then we're using our bulk time. We'll go to a cyber cafe and register JAMB for many people, right? We'll go to different cafes. So we had like bulk times we'll have time or slots across different cafes in the same city. So if we go to this cafe and they're having network issues, we'll go to the next cafe, the next cyber cafe, and buy bulk time, register people. We need to charge. I think every registration we used to charge, I can't remember, maybe 1,000 naira or so. But interestingly, it was the money I got from that kind of hustle that I used to open my first bank account and deposited. I would say maybe the first income I made from that. I opened the account in Diamond Bank in Lafia, Nasarawa State. Then I went to
Yeah.
Air and I deposited 3,000 naira. Um, so that was from all of that hustle
Yeah.
we used to do at the time. So
Amazing.
I was already cyber literate at the
Yeah.
time in a way. Of course, I didn't have a laptop. Did I even have a phone? I think I did, but I can't remember. Anyways, but I was already cyber literate. So when I got into university, that drive of wanting to register JAM for people was still there. You know,
Yeah.
and sometimes we'll just go to the cafe because we want to browse stuff. We want to, you just want to check the internet out. And it was one of those days I went to the cafe and I stumbled on this scholarship, on the total scholarship, just by chance. Oh, I think I saw somebody registering it in the cafe. And then I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And they said, oh, I'm registering this. And so I registered. And when I registered, I went together with my friend. I went to tell some of my friends who were not there to say, hey, I was in the cafe. And then I heard some people registering this. Do you want to register? Well, let's go tomorrow. So you register too. So went with a few of my friends again the next day. We all registered. But we didn't get the scholarship that year. I think they awarded just two people out of the, in fact, me that took the information to other people, I didn't get it. Then two of my friends got it. The next year, and so the following year, we went to apply again because we knew that the scholarship was now an annual thing. So we had to go back to the cafe the next year to apply again. Shortly before, at this time, my dad was already getting sick and all of that. So we applied and then we went on holiday. So while we were on holiday, the list came out for us to go and write an exams in Abuja. I remember I had to tell my dad, oh, I need money to go and write an exam. And he was like, why do you need to travel? It's school holiday. We struggled a bit. It's like, oh, and I insisted I needed to travel to go and write the exams in Abuja. And so he gave me money, I think 1,000 naira. Then I went to Abuja. We hired a bus, all of us, like an 18-seater bus. We went, took the exams. And then when I came back, my dad died, obviously, following some months later. We finished the burial. I returned to school. When I returned to school, I was in a photocopying shop, just trying to photocopy handouts after, because I just resumed school. I just resumed to I just started I've just started my second 300 level year then. And so we just was resumed. So we're photocopying handouts and some other materials. And then one of my friends just called me and said, "Hi Aaron, have you looked at the total list is out?" He said, "Serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, have you checked?" I said, "I've not checked, I'm just coming back." I said, "Okay." And so I can't remember if we went to, yeah, we had to go to a cyber cafe very quickly, or I can't remember if it was on my phone, or somehow we got to find the list, we checked, and my name was there. And so I got the 150,000 naira. But that's kind of like the story of how I stumbled into the scholarship, you know, how I got there. But yes, that's
Wow.
how I found out about the scholarship and applied and eventually got it. And that became the stepping stone for every other scholarship that I benefited from.
Yeah. I mean, you're the scholarship man for a fact. Because you got that one, and then you got another one to go to the UK and even Zambia. You said, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
you
didn't go to
got
Zambia anyways. I turned that down
yeah.
because I wanted the
You
UK.
were
So
in the UK. Was the stipend enough to like sustain you? You had to work as well just to supplement.
oh, oh, I mean, it was enough to sustain me to pay my bills and all that. I think we used to get a thousand pound, £1,056 every month, and my rent was
Oh,
200 or £300 a month. So it was enough actually. But of course, I still
yeah.
had to work when
You can always yeah.
during yeah, of course, just to because again, the idea was I was coming from a place where I didn't even have money. Like I'm proper broke, so I just can't finish a master's and return back home broke. So I need to save money. So I worked as well during
Yeah.
the when I could to save up money, and so yeah, so it was enough, but
So
but I
yeah.
I, I worked as
Um, so you had to go back to Nigeria after your master's.
Yeah, the scholarship stipulates that when you finish, you have to return back to Nigeria. Immediately you finish, you're meant to return. The idea is they've invested in you with a scholarship. The idea is to use your skills and go back home to develop your country, or
Wow.
use those skills for in your home
Yeah.
country. So that was the idea of the scholarship, which was a good one. So yeah, when I finished, I had to return back to Nigeria and then
Hmm.
started
But did you
working.
want to
Uh,
return? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. At the time, to be honest, at the time, I wanted to. In fact, saying this now, it seems very funny, but at the time, there was this drive of me wanting to go back. I wanted to go back home to, there was this idea of I wanted to go back home to. I've always been in the development sector, working as an NGO worker. So, and one other thing was I didn't like the cold. Um, and the UK was too cold,
yeah.
so and when I finished, most of my friends were back home. I was still much younger. There's that drive you want to go. You're missing friends, you're missing family, you're missing home, all of that. So I really wanted to go back. So in fact, I remember the day I touched down, um, the airport in Abuja. I was so excited that I was back. It was like a breath of
Wow.
fresh air. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to catch up with friends and all of that. It was so good. So yeah, I did want to go back. In fact, I had friends who were applying for PhDs, applying for other opportunities at the time. Um, in fact, I was sharing. Although I think I applied, I attempted to apply for like two scholarships or so that didn't work out or so, and I did that out of pressure on my friends. I saw them applying, so I said, okay, let me just apply to that kind of thing. But it
Hmm.
wasn't like something that was really driven in me to apply. I think the drive uh, for me to do a PhD um, really set in when I returned back to Nigeria. I started working. I had gotten married. No, yeah, I was dating my wife now. We were dating then. She had gotten the same scholarship and joined and went to the UK as well. and she really wanted me to do a PhD. She was really pushing. I'm like, oh, you've got to do a PhD. I already started doing MC work at the time, and she will always tell me, don't you think that you don't know that if you have a PhD and you're an MC, it will even be there's this there's more prestige. You've been an MC and you have a PhD, that kind of thing. I know she used to
Yeah.
tell me that. And just looking at it now, I call myself a doctor of ceremony instead of a master of
Yeah.
ceremony because I have a PhD. Uh, and then it's just looking back, it's so interesting because I didn't want to do it. She pushed, really, literally fought me
Yeah.
to do that. But then, yeah, we were dating at the time. I just wanted to go back home and work and all that. So it was when I returned back that the drive to do a PhD came, and so I applied for another scholarship to leave and came to Australia. But yeah, at the
Mm.
time I was interested in going back. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. I mean, the way you say, oh, I applied for this PhD, oh, sorry, I applied for a scholarship, and I got it, and you make it sound so easy. I just want to get into, because I think I have researched applying to to a scholarship like a few years ago, but the amount
mm,
of documentation that I needed to position to get any opportunity in that regard, just like, oh no,
yeah,
I didn't have energy for it at that point. I said, I'll just pay if I want to go for masters.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
It it
going
takes
into
work,
the
It takes work
what
because
mm,
you have to research a lot. You have to research, what scholarship it is, what documents you want. You have to get your transcript, your passports. Um, and there are a lot of behind the scenes stuff that obviously, for instance, when I wanted to go and write my first IELTS exam, I had to borrow money to go and write the exams.
yeah,
I took an IOU at work at the time to complete the fee. I went to my uncle to say, please
wow,
borrow me a bit of money. He gave me money. I took a car to Abuja to go and write the IELTS and all of that. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of work. So for instance, when I got the first scholarship, I did the total EMP scholarship. That was the money I used to buy my very first laptop, right? So I left Kefi in Nassau
yeah,
State then to go to Abuja to go and buy my laptop. Now, when I got that laptop, it was in that laptop that backtracking a bit, that I created that folder scholarships, right? And I
yeah,
started researching scholarships and all of that. So, I mean, it takes a lot of work. So, like I mentioned, the scholarship I got with the total scholarship, that was the money I used to buy my very first laptop. I remember I created a folder called scholarships within that laptop. Uh,
yeah,
and so I continued to research scholarship. This was in 2011.
mm,
When did I buy that laptop? 2011 or 2012, I bought the laptop. Um, Bought my first suit, of course, at the time. But I kept researching scholarships from then. But so if you think of it from 2012 to 2011, 2012, the first scholarship I got after that, from the next scholarship I got after that, was in 2016. So look at how many years in between that.
yeah, yeah,
But in between those years, I was volunteering, I was doing stuff, I was
yeah,
researching, checking all things, and looking at the type of scholarship I wanted to apply. I mean, I would have gotten it earlier, but I didn't because I mean, it
yeah,
takes a lot. Um, I'm thinking about, there's something I didn't even have money. I have to look for internet and all of this stuff. I remember I'll be sitting with my friends we might just be gisting somewhere, and I would just say, I'll just, I'll just look at my phone, and I'll just tell. I was always with my laptop. So even when we're out to hang out with friends, I have a bag. My laptop is there, and I'll just pick up my laptop. Like, what's the problem? Like, oh, I just saw this scholarship. I need to apply now, and I'll just go by the side. Well, we say I'll just go by the side and draft Of course, I already had SOPs and all of that, all of the statement everything. So I'll just modify the application and then submit, you know. And
Yeah.
yeah, at the time, yeah, I think I was even managing a cyber cafe at the time. This was immediately I finished uni and I didn't get mobilized for NYSC. Again, I needed a bit of cash. So there was this man who closed down his cafe and I told him, I can manage this for you, one of my friends. And he said, are you sure? Yeah. And so he gave me the keys. He employed me. I became the manager. The cafe was just opposite a polytechnic then. So I would open, I would
Yeah.
go to work as a cyber in the cyber cafe. I'll open the shop at about maybe 8 a.m. No, 7:30 I think or 7:38. I don't finish work until 10 p.m. because it's
Mm.
cyber cafe. You have to do photocopies. You have to type assignments for students. You have to help
Yeah.
students um, search for exams. I was also teaching students diploma. You know the diploma they do in computer then, where people you learn
Yeah.
Corel Draw,
Desktop
you learn
publishing.
MS
Yeah.
Word, learn Excel. Yeah, I was also teaching students that at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I needed that leverage because I needed to get the money um, to keep up with the search for scholarships, to keep up with, at the time, of course, my
Mm.
parents were no longer there. So yeah, but it takes a
Yeah.
lot of work because although I started that drive came from 2011, I didn't get one until 2016, and in between that, I
Yeah.
was volunteering. But at some point, I went to volunteer for 3 months in Lagos. I left my state, Nasra at the time, Nasra State, went to Lagos. I was there for 3 months volunteering with some other guys who came from the UK at the time. So there was a lot happening in between that time, but then eventually it happened in 2016, and then
Yeah.
the rest
We'll
is
still
history.
come
But
back
it
to
takes a lot
that.
of work,
But the
and that's
reason
why
why I asked you that, yeah,
yeah,
the reason why I actually
mm,
asked you that
yeah. Go
is
ahead.
I want people to actually appreciate the power of compounding because you just shared with us now from 2011 to 2016, you were actively thinking about it, even passively,
Yeah,
actively. You were doing small things, tiny changes that built up, right? That built up to you getting that scholarship in 2016,
16.
another one in 2016. So, what we do as skills when we train people and help people learn skills. Sometimes some
Mm,
people they want things to happen like immediately the training, like they want to get a job.
yeah,
And
of
you
course. Yeah,
see,
yeah.
like you want
That's
everything
right.
to happen immediately, and then okay,
Yeah,
put in the
yeah.
work now, put in the work to get it done, like apply like
Hmm.
crazy, prepare your elevator pitch, prepare for interview. You can't do. You still want to go for shift, go for this, go for that. But
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of like to build a skill, to achieve result, it's a sequence of small steps, small
absolutely.
progress, small wins to get that result. People see the end result and you just feel like, oh, that thing magically happened. It's not always like
Yeah.
that. So
Oh,
I think that
definitely
was
not. No.
yeah, I appreciate that, you shared that process with people so they know applying for scholarship is not just I wake up like Dr. AAP and just apply and I get
Of course not. Takes a lot
it.
of work. Yeah, takes a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you might be fortunate. Sometimes you might get it at first go. Um,
yeah,
but a lot of people who have been successful with scholarships have gotten a lot of rejections as well. So that's,
absolutely.
yeah. So it's,
That
it's the same thing. You
rejection
just, yeah. I
is
mean,
part
it's
of the process. Yeah,
again, exactly part of the problem, like part of the process. Like again, I go back to articles like I write lots of personal stories on my personal
yeah,
website across my social media platform as well. And there's an article I wrote and I called it uh, "Failure as a Disguised Win," I think, or something of that. So I can't remember. I've written a few articles but then the
yeah,
idea is that failure, what we call failure, is it's a win, but it's just
mm,
disguised as failure. So it's a
mm,
win, but it's coated as failure. So you have to unwrap it, and the process of
mm,
unwrapping all of that failure. That is you learning all of the skills you need to learn, getting all of the rejections, not having money, losing parents, losing family, all of the setback, falling sick. All of those
Yeah.
barriers are dis- they are all they are all wins, but they are disguised. So
Yeah.
as you continue to open up the wrap, just like an
Yeah.
onion. At the end of the day, you get to that wing, but it's a whole onion, for instance. Yeah, it's a whole
Yeah.
onion that has many layers to get to the
Yeah.
very one to get to the one that is, how do I call it? The whole bulb of the onion,
Yeah.
that's what they call it. If you continue
Yeah.
to unwrap and unwrap and unwrap and unwrap, you get to the very tiniest one in the middle, and you can think of that as the wing. Um,
Yeah.
but then you have to do all of the unwrapping. You have to continue to take out all of the different layers and layers and layers. And those are the pains. Those are the things you will continue to call failure. But they are win. They're
Yeah.
actually you winning, because you unwrapping is that case of you winning, of winning actually. So until you
Yeah.
continue to unwrap that those disguise failure, you won't actually get it. So it's not just not a it's not a one-stop shop. It's not a straightforward process for a lot of people. You have to go through that, and this might sound like what every other person say, but it's the truth. It's
Yeah.
a process. You
It
just
is.
not a lot of people will get it at first go. You have to keep trying and trying and going through all of those different hurdles before you clinch that
Absolutely.
what you've been looking for sometimes. So yeah, and as they say,
Amazing.
a a a winner is it's what's that? I need to remember that. Um, no, a lo- a winner is a loser who tried one more time. So somebody who
Correct.
has lost before, you just tried one more
Cor-
time, and then you became a winner. So
correct.
a winner is a loser who tried one more time.
Correct.
And then the
If
story
you
changes. So yeah,
if you're not willing to take that shot, I mean, there's no way you can win. Yeah, you can do something once and get it, but trust me, there are a lot of things that don't happen that way. You have to try multiple times,
exactly,
before you can get the
exactly. Yeah,
outcome. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I want to dive more into your area
no
of
worries.
expertise, right? So scholarship,
Hmm.
PhD. Just circling back to Australia, basically, would you say,
Yeah,
in your experience, like PhD has been worth it for you?
yes, it has, and the reason is the reason is this. The I'm living in Australia because I came to do a PhD,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's how I'm in Australia because I got a scholarship.
yeah,
A lot of people travel abroad because they can fund themselves to travel abroad. They can pay the
yeah,
school fees and all of that. I couldn't
yeah,
do that. I didn't have that money. It was not possible for me to get that kind of money anywhere in the world. I
yeah,
didn't have parents who could even give me that money. It was just
mm,
me. So
mm,
the reason why I'm living in Australia, or the reason why I got to Australia, is because I got a PhD scholarship. And
mm,
a lot of the opportunities I have now, um, I like to think that my PhD contributed. I mean, I work as a researcher now, um, and that's because I have a PhD. It's not to
yeah,
say that if you don't have a PhD, you cannot do these things.
yeah,
But my PhD opened up the door for me, right? For other people, it could be their master's degree who opened up that door. For some people,
yeah,
it could be their undergrad degrees. For some people, it could be a certificate course they did, right? And
mm,
different people have different things that gives them that breakthrough. For
yeah,
me, it was my PhD, and I like to think that even if I didn't get it, even if I didn't have a PhD, there were a lot of things I would still be fine. I would still succeed in life, but I may not have been here, right?
yeah,
I've got my wife, I've got my two beautiful daughters. Um,
absolutely.
um, the, if I remember, like I told you, my wife pushed me to do a PhD because she felt that, oh, you've got a lot to offer. It'll open
Yeah.
up a lot of doors for you. There are places, whether we like it or not, and this is the truth. I casually say I'm a doctor of ceremony when I go to be a host for an event. That's because I have a PhD, right? Doesn't mean that
Yeah.
if I don't have a PhD, I mean I was doing that even before I got a PhD. But
Yeah.
there's this prestige that comes with that. Take away other aspects. Yeah. But there's this
Yeah.
prestige that, when somebody says this, I mean, anywhere you go and they say, oh, this is Dr. Aaron. You've got to give me some attention, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to,
Definitely.
it's a doctor, oh really? And you begin to say, is he a medical doctor? Is he a PhD before?
Yeah.
But the thing is that having a PhD has already allowed
Yeah.
me to break through the barrier that maybe a lot of people might have, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not to
Yeah.
say that, like I mentioned, that's not to say if you don't have a PhD, I mean, it's not. But in my case,
Yeah.
um, having a PhD has made a lot of difference in my life, giving me opportunities to, of course, get a scholarship, get a job that I'm working now currently. It means I'm able to provide for myself and my family.
Absolutely.
I got the job even before I finished my PhD, just when I submitted. But it's because I
Yeah.
was heading to the end. So yeah, it gave me those opportunities as well. So I like to think that yeah, it gave me that
Wow.
opportunity. Yeah,
Big congratulations to you, because I mean what you've achieved so far is not easy. It's a lot of
thank you.
work, and I know how much hours. We don't use candles here, but yeah, I mean, let's say how many candles, sleepless nights that that's
Yeah,
going
that's
into
right.
that really. But what's
That's
like
right.
one, if you wanted to summarize it to one skill that has helped you so far, what would that skill be? I know PhD,
Hmm.
you're a big researcher, so let's not use that one.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, that's just even a very so one skill that have. So you mean something I've applied in my life that has kind of
yeah,
gotten
as
me
a
here?
PhD, yeah, yeah, during your
Yeah.
PhD journey,
Oh, during the PhD journey.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, that would definitely be resilience.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've heard people say this, but a PhD a PhD is not entirely about intelligence. It's
Yeah.
some people will give abstract figures. They'll say, "Oh, a PhD is 10% what you know, and it's 90% resilience." Right? Because it tests you, it pushes you to every limit you can think of. Right?
Hmm.
Um, everything you write, your supervisors will have to say, "Oh no, it's not." You have to go back. You read, you write, you read, you write, and at the end of the day, you have to write a whole book. I mean, my thesis was 100,000 word, over 300 pages, right? Um,
Wow.
so I think it's resilience. So you find people you've heard of people who were doing PhDs and they committed suicide because
Yeah.
it's a lot of mental. It drains you physically, mentally, socially, financially, everything. So I think resilience it is for me. Resilience. I think
Hmm.
even at some point, I keep saying, "Oh, if I was even a domestic student where I was not on a scholarship and my visas and all that was tied to my PhD, I would just even leave it and just go on holiday for like 6 months before I come back to it." But I didn't have that
Hmm.
leverage. I had to stay in the game.
Yeah. You
You
have
know,
to. Yeah.
you've
That's.
started it, you finished. It was not just about me. Now I already had a family, and also if you drop out now, what's going to happen to your kids and your family? It's that you have
Yeah.
to finish. You started it, you must get to the end. So I think one word would be resilience. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's powerful.
Mm.
The next one I have for you, and I know we're getting to towards the end, basically. So like I know you do a lot of big community building work, helping people,
Mm.
as inspiring people with your story and everything to go for opportunities that they typically would not, have that information. So what is
Yeah.
like step by step, like just not really going into detail. Somebody wants to apply or go for PhD or scholarship in general now? Like, what is the process, like stepwise, if you can?
Okay. First thing will be to identify what scholarship you want to apply for. You identify the scholarship, then you look out for the requirements of that scholarship. You look out for the requirements. If you want to do a PhD, you know that you have to have your passport, of course. If you're applying internationally, you have to have your transcript, you have to have your certificate, you have to have your CV, you have to have all that sorted. You've got to have a research proposal. It means you have to have a research idea that you want to do during your PhD. So you have to draft or develop a research proposal. You have to look for supervisors in that university or in the particular school you want to go to. You have to email the supervisors, get them to accept you as a prospective student. Then you now apply for the admission, apply for scholarships. Um, and then you get in some universities, you can apply for both at the same time. In some universities, you have to apply for admission separately, and then you apply for the scholarship separately. And in all of this, you have to write essays, of course, so statements of purpose or motivational letters, or you've got to also write a personal statement, depending on whatever they're calling it. But you have to have this document. So first step will be, I think the very first step, even going back to the basics, will be um, what do you want to do if you want to do a PhD? What topic do you want to research in that PhD? And so if you think of that and have made a decision, then you begin to look out for, universities that might have that kind of course, and if they have scholarships or not, if they don't have scholarships. And so you draw up that list, then you look for specific documentation that they want. But the basics is what I've mentioned. Of course, you've got your passport, your transcripts, your certificates, your statements of purpose, SOPs, your research proposal. In some universities, you will find that academics or academics in the universities already have topics that they want students to research on. So they will advertise those topics. You just have to email them and say, yes, here's my CV. I'm able to do this topic. I'm able to research this topic because I've got this X and Y experience from this, from that, from that. And then some of them ask you to maybe write a very small proposal based on that topic. So in that way, you are not the one thinking about the topic. There's already a topic. You just have to key into it by developing a proposal. In my own case, I had to think about the topic. I had to develop my proposal and share that proposal with academics and convince them to take me on as a student. So that's a more harder route. But that's like a summary of it. But again, on my website, on my formerly Twitter, my X profile, my pin tweet, I've got all of the threads you can think of: how to write SOPs, how to email supervisors, how to write proposals, how to search for supervisors, anything you can think of when it comes to scholarship. Of course, we've got a website. There are videos on my website. There's pretty much resources that we have written about almost anything you can think of around the scholarship space. Yes.
So, if I wanted to go for a PhD, for example, is it compulsory for me to have like publications? And I'm now saying that in my own case, for example, where we are building products, right? We are building software, is out there. We showcased it to a lot of companies in Canberra, things like that. That is online. There's evidence for it. Is it a potential candidate, right, to actually say to a supervisor, I'm trying to innovate in this area, like computer science. Do you think that this fits that kind of research publication, to convince them to take me on?
Yes, they contribute. If you've got them, that's important. In fact, some supervisors will not take you on if you don't have publications. Because that's a way you demonstrate that you are capable of conducting research independently if you've got publication. So some supervisors will not take you if you don't have publications, but it's not about it entirely, because remember, it's not just about publications. They have to look at your class of degree. They have to look at your experience, your work experience. They have to even look at your proposal. At the time I applied for my PhD, I had just 3 publications that were not as strong, but I had a very good I had a very good experience professional experience in the field of, I mean, HIV was my field. I had worked, had volunteered, had done a lot in the space of HIV. So I had that experience to back up my application. My class of degree, I had a good class of degree. I finished with a distinction in my master's degree. So that was also good for me. And so it's not about
Yeah.
publications, but if you have them, it really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, just on that as well. Like, if, for example, I wanted to position my own profile, right? Say I want to
Hmm.
consult you for 30 minutes. So, advise me, how do I position for this scholarship? I built, we're building product
Yeah.
application to solve real problems here in Australia for immigrants and all of that. Is there any
Hmm.
potential there to say, hey, this doctor maybe in computer science, department to say, hey, I am innovating in this computer science field. Can you
Yeah.
take me on this research project you have, or maybe to add value?
Absolutely. Yeah, that will help. In fact, and that goes back to professional experience because you have professional experience. It's not
Yeah,
entirely about publications. You have a track record of training people, of building products, um, guiding people to getting jobs and all of that in the space of computer science. So what would be important is to identify what aspect of your wealth of experience that works, and then identify, oh, maybe that topic is something that is similar to kind of what we do at Sync Skills. And when you go to a supervisor with this track record, it helps a lot. So even when you don't
yeah,
have, for instance, even when you have zero publication, they're able to look at it and say, oh, okay, there's no publication, but there's quality work here. So that works as well. So that goes back to professional experience.
mm,
Mm.
amazing. I know you also help you also help a lot of immigrants, with scholarship, education, advice,
Yeah,
career advice, things like
yeah.
that. So
Mm.
what have you seen in your own space, like the major issues plaguing immigrants? I want to focus on like maybe African immigrant, things that you wish, oh my God, African immigrants should be doing better or differently.
Mm. I mean, in the scholarship space, to be honest, lots of Africans are really applying scholarship. They're applying for scholarships. They are doing a lot in that space, especially again
Yeah,
in the education space. Um, but
yeah,
I think it's just some people are not as careful in applying for this application. For instance, is the world of AI now, right? You find people
yeah,
getting AI to write their statement of purpose or draft their CVs or write their personal statements.
yeah,
And I mean, that complete reliance on AI. I mean, how do you demonstrate that you can conduct research or become a grad student if you're
yeah,
completely relying on AI to do stuff for you? So that's one area I find now from my engagement with people that I find very, very problematic. That if you've got to apply for this college, of course, we've got to use AI it's there for us to use, but you just can't
yeah,
allow AI to write, and AI cannot write my story. ChatGPT
yeah,
can't do that, you know. So
exactly.
you find people they put in those things completely into AI. Whatever they get, garbage in, garbage out, they send it to professors, and it's easy to
Wow.
identify these things. So that's a real
Yeah,
problem now that I wish that um, people don't do. Um, that's yeah, that would be it
yeah,
for me.
yeah. So you've been a couple of years in Australia now, like of course,
Yeah,
a big family
yeah.
man, beautiful
Mm.
family. That is your number one joy and happiness.
That's right. Yeah.
What else do you love about Australia?
Ah, I don't know. I mean, it's very multicultural. That's what I
Yeah,
know. I know it's multicultural. There are lots of ethnicities here.
yeah,
Um, I'm I'm very involved in the Nigerian community, for instance. I network a lot with people in and outside the community. Um, but I think that's one thing that I think it's I think it's good for Australia, the multiculturalness, if that's a word, in Australia.
yeah,
It's very diverse. People from all across the world are here. But I
Yeah.
think the downside is that it's very far from home. So before we
Yeah.
think about planning a trip, going to go to Nigeria, it's, you have to think about
Yeah.
that really, really hard. Um, but
Yeah.
that will be it. That will be it. Is one thing I like is that how multicultural it is. Of course, I love the
Mm.
weather in Queensland where I am. Um, but the distance for me isn't as fun, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, even if you are living in the UK anyway, you still have to plan your trip. But I find that with Australia, because
Yeah.
it's very far,
It's very
there's a
fun.
bit of
Yeah.
that downside, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
But I
But I think,
think Australia needs a better PR, to be honest, because
yeah.
there are a lot of good things here. You said weather, multiculturalism. I think there's potential to earn a lot, especially if you're doing,
Mhm.
strategic work. The wages are high. Of course, cost is also high. Everything is expensive, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But a lot of people back home, I don't know if you've noticed, think that Australia is just about wild animals, snakes,
yeah.
kangaroos,
Oh,
and stuff.
yeah,
And
that's a big misconception, to be honest. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you get that all the time. You hear that all of the time. I think it's about, and I think you sleep in beds with snakes.
honestly, I've literally had some people message me like, maybe they see a TikTok post, they say, "Oh no, are you okay? Is this how you guys live in Australia with snakes on your bed and
Exactly.
things like
Yeah.
that?" But I think that is the exception. It's not like all of. Or have you seen like snakes in your house before?
No, no, I haven't, to be honest. I haven't seen. I'm almost 5 years. I haven't seen any in
Exactly.
my house. I've only still seen it in the TV, in the news, not, or maybe in the
Yeah,
zoo when I went to the zoo, but not,
yeah.
not anywhere near me.
Yeah, so that's why I said I think a lot of people need to, I still think Africans are still very, they are unaware about some of the opportunities that Australia presents.
I think
So
so
I'm
too.
not, yeah, the population here is not yet strong. Like sometimes when I see a black person in my suburb, I'm happy, like, hey, hello,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah, exactly.
I know when you live, do you have a lot of Nigerians? I think you live in
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
not close to me, but not around where, not like in my house, but I've been 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes drive away from
Yeah,
me. I've got lots of friends that I visit all of the time. So yeah, but
yeah.
yeah, it's like you said, it's always
It,
fun to see somebody who is like you around where you live.
it is. So we always have this tradition on this podcast where
Hmm.
a guest, our previous guest, left you a question. So
Ah,
yeah,
okay. Interesting.
you
Okay.
would also you would also leave the next guest a question
A
as well.
question.
So that's the tradition. So
Okay.
the question for you is, what was your why? Like it's very generic. Just
Hmm.
what was your why?
What was my why? Hmm.
Yeah.
What was my why? I wanted to prove HIV wrong.
Mm.
That was it for me. And I wanted to not be hungry. I needed to break out of where I was. That was my
Mm.
why.
Improving HIV wrong. Can you give us a snippet? Like how is that journey going so far? Yeah.
Sorry, say again?
Like improving HIV wrong. Like
Yeah.
how is that journey so far? Of course, you've made a lot of progress. Just
Yeah.
snippet.
Yeah, I think it worked out for me. I mean, I got tons of scholarship, tons of opportunities, finished school, and I now work.
Yeah.
I've got a beautiful family. So I think I like to think that I'm not there yet, but I'm I'm heading there, and it's
Yeah.
looking promising.
The fight continues.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good. So to your question for the next guest.
Hmm. Wow. That's a really tricky one.
Could be anything.
Hmm. What one advice you will give to your younger self?
Ah, hmm, that's powerful. That's good. That's good.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No
I
worries.
think we've
Thanks
come
for
to
having
the
me.
end of this podcast. Thank you so much. It's great
No worries.
having you around as always. Thank you for sharing your incredible journey. And we can't wait to always celebrate all your milestones. We know that you continue to shine and help
Thank
the
you.
community grow. So thank you
Thank you
so
very
much,
much.
Dr.
Thanks, and
AOP.
thanks for the amazing work you guys do too, and thanks for having me as well.
Thank you so much. So, guys, if you have events, so Dr. AAP, our Doctor of Ceremony, is here to take bookings. On your website, we're
That's
going to link it. So, we're going to link
yes,
it. If you have, you
yes.
do weddings,
E-
birthdays,
Everything, any
everything.
any
There
type of
you go.
events. I'm your
There
guy.
you go. There you go.
Yes.
Scholarship, events, reach out to him, make that event
Research.
colorful.
I'm here.
Research as well. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing, and yeah, we'll speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you. No worries.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
No worries.
So thank you for watching. If you got value from this episode, you know what to do. Please smash the subscribe button, like, share with your friends. Please, the more subscribers we get, the more guests we can, bring onto this platform. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.